Renee Washington, welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing and I'm happy to be here.
I am glad you agreed to come back on because I know last time you were on, you talked a lot about your sports reporting career and you also were a college soccer player. And that's more of what I wanted to get into today. But for those of you guys who don't know Renee, she's a sports reporter for ESPN. She's a podcast host. She's a world traveler. She seems to do it all, and she's super busy and just rocking it out. And I'm just grateful for her to just discuss that journey in athletics and then into her career. So let's kick it off with this. Why don't you get into your childhood and when you started playing soccer and when you started to get serious about the game?
Yes, yes. I'm like looking at the soccer ball in your background, getting nostalgic because that's how soccer balls looked when I started. And they've evolved so much and the game has evolved so much. And for me, when I started, honestly, I was fortunate that my parents let me play every sport and just try it out. My sisters were the same way, my two older sisters, as well as my younger brother. So for each of us, they just gave us a chance to try every sport, see what we liked, see what we didn't like. And soccer, actually, in the beginning was awful for me. I was terrible. I didn't really get it. I just kind of stood there, and although I thought I was really good, it wasn't until I was an adult that I like had conversations with my parents and realized I was terrible in the beginning. But I enjoyed it. I still loved it. I was standing in the middle of the field, picking at the grass while the game was going on around me. But for instructional soccer, at 5, 6 years old, in my mind, I was killing it out there. So it stuck, and it's crazy how it evolved. Not only the soccer ball, but actually the actual sport for me to help me grow, to help me be such a just a better, more confident person, and to be able to, as you talk about travel and meet new friends and meet new people and just have so many opportunities through it. So it all began with just standing in the middle of the soccer field, plucking at the grass.
Oh, that is so awesome to hear, and it seems like the players who do make it at a high level, they just had that pure joy for the game, and they weren't like, "Oh, well, I need to get a scholarship or play pro at such a young age." They're just so immersed in the sport and just doing it for fun, and they just develop that passion. Now, what other sports did you dabble in?
Yeah, so I, exactly as you mentioned, was that kid that literally just was playing to enjoy playing. I just wanted to play as much as I could. I played, once I finally got the hang of things, I was playing all the time in my neighborhood, in my house with my sisters. We'd be playing like in the living room, anywhere we could play. Soccer was my main sport, but I also played basketball and ran track. I played all three sports my entire childhood. Well, track not as much, I should say. That was like middle school, and then I also ran track again in college. Played basketball all the way through high school up until my senior year when I obviously was going to LaSalle University to play soccer, and then basketball ended for me. But I really just enjoyed playing. I really did not have, even going into college, I still didn't even have any expectations. I was like, I just want to go somewhere I can play for 4 years and enjoy playing. But I never even expected to have an opportunity to play professionally or play at a high level collegiately or coach or even getting to reporting. The goal was just to play for the love of the game. And it was genuine. My parents didn't have to force me to go play. I was like playing in structured teams, travel soccer, but also playing on my own whenever I could. Like I was vividly can remember being the kid walking around the street. I don't even know if they still have these, but the it was a string and you put the soccer ball in it and you could kick the soccer ball. It was like a yo-yo for
Yes.
soccer. And I always had one. I'd have it attached around my waist. I'd have it in my hand. I would just be walking around kicking the soccer ball barefoot with shoes on, whatever. I just always had a soccer ball with me. And so my goal was just to enjoy playing as long as I could. And that ended up being a fantastic career through that genuine love for the game.
I'm trying to think of the name of that piece of
Mhm.
equipment. I feel it was called something like Soccer Buddy or like Juggle Master. It helped you with your juggling and your touch. I don't even know,
Yeah.
but I had one as well, and it was a game changer, and it was so fun to practice on your own and get better at juggling. I envision you as one of those kids who just got outside, worked on their skills on their own, played pickup, and just really put in the work. You did more than what was expected of you. Now, let's kind of transition to when you started to be like, okay, maybe I should focus on just soccer. I do want to play in college. I want to play all 4 years, contribute to a program. What age did that transition happen for you? And was there a specific moment where you're just like, I'm serious about this?
There were a few. The definite one was in high school because at that time I was actively playing school soccer, school basketball. I was doing AAU basketball and travel soccer. And also I started playing, well, I had always been playing ODP, but my ODP success had grown. Like the first couple years of ODP, I wasn't getting much playing time. And then it grew. And I was not only on the state team, but also getting opportunities on the regional team. So my opportunities were growing. And so ninth grade of high school was when that was my final year playing AAU basketball. My team had been going to like nationals and traveling, and it just started to get to be too much. And that was also the time that my soccer career was really taking the next step. So it was a tough decision. But for me, I always, unlike my two sisters who had an even split, like they loved soccer and basketball evenly, they were very talented in both about evenly. Soccer always had an edge for me. It was a sport I could play anytime with anyone, no nerves, never a hesitation. Whereas for basketball, what I started to realize was it required more of an intentional decision to go play. You know, like I had to force myself to play more and I was more nervous and I'd be more shy to play with older kids. Like for both, I always played with my two older sisters, their travel teams. I'd play with boys, I'd play with cousins, like literally whoever. But for soccer, that was easier to do. It was like, oh, let's go play. For basketball, I was always nervous. And I think it was because although I was tall in high school. I wasn't tall until high school, I should say. Um, but I was always skinnier and lankier. I didn't feel like I could compete with the older kids. But soccer, different sport. You can play with anybody, any size, any age, and if you're good enough, you're fine. So I learned in high school that the confidence and that organic, less hesitant feeling I had towards soccer is what helped me move more to lean and want to be a soccer player versus wanting to go the path. I was getting opportunities in basketball for like college recruiting and stuff, but it just was not the same drive or love that I had for soccer. Not as a player, as a watcher, totally different. As a fan, as a player, soccer definitely had my heart.
That's such great advice for the athletes listening who are doing multiple sports. And then they get to that point in high school where it starts to be overwhelming and they do have to make that tough decision to pick one. And it's always going to be the sport where you have that love. And yes, you still have nerves, but you're more excited about it. So that's such great advice. Now, basketball and track, those are actually the 2 sports I recommend my young soccer players dabble in because there's just so much carryover and benefit to the athleticism in soccer. So, what are some things from basketball and track that raise the ceiling on your soccer performance?
You are absolutely correct. I always tell people, and I was just talking to a parent last week about this exact same thing. Play multiple sports as long as you can. I'm a big advocate for it. I think it helps in a number of ways. Physically, it helps you work on different muscles. Mentally, it also just gives you a chance to miss another sport. Playing basketball when I wasn't heavy soccer season. Now, of course, every sport is year round, but when it was heavy winter basketball season and I was playing more basketball than soccer, it gave me a chance to miss soccer, but it also gave me a chance to still be doing something active and not just sitting around. But from the physical standpoint, all three of those, and lacrosse is another one that definitely fits in really well with it. They allow you to train different muscles. So basketball is a lot of like jumping, being more explosive. It's a lot of sprints, quick change of direction. Track is literally working on your form and endurance. And I was a middle distance runner, so the mile and the half mile, and even the 400, which directly connects into soccer. So being able to accelerate and being able to like run essentially, all of that just helped me out absolutely as a soccer player because I could see directly and vice versa how my success in one helped the other. And I was very good at all three. Um, never lost a track meet, like basketball was all state, all area, whatever, but it just was not the same love. But at least it gave me the balance and physically it helped me cross train in that sense to be able to be a better overall athlete.
I like what you said there about how athletes need to be able to miss their sport, and it really sucks because nowadays sports are year round in the youth space. So I can't repeat enough to everyone listening that if you're going to try another sport, try and reserve that for its own season, so you can avoid the physical and the mental burnout. Now
Mhm.
let's fast forward to your college career at LaSalle. So what was your recruiting process like? Were you recruited at a showcase? What club team did you choose to be on during this time? Just walk us through what was going on.
Sure. Again, it was definitely a different time. I was coached by my dad actually growing up. There were academies and ECNL was starting. At the time, it was a little bit different. There was like different. It was a different league name, but it was similar to what's now with the different types of like leagues you can play in and academies and programs you can play in. But for me, growing up playing on like the local town team, we were the Hibernian Express actually, and out of Central New Jersey, coached by my dad. Along with it was always a different dad, and it would bring in trainers to work with us. But they were the ones that were coaching, and the trainers would sometimes come to games and stuff too. But that was my youth travel experience and completely different now. And I actually have had opportunities since I stopped playing to coach, and I coached in academies and saw the completely other side of it, where you have paid professional coaches and even former players. Like my dad played professional basketball; he didn't play soccer, and the other dads did not play at a high level either. But honestly, it really aligned perfectly with who I am. And talking back to what I discussed earlier of just the natural love for the game, that it wasn't about spending thousands and thousands of dollars. We could not afford to do that. First of all, it was just about, hey, we're going to give for all the players on this team the best opportunity to get professional training, play at a high level. We still played against the teams like PDA and FC Bucks out of New Jersey and Philadelphia for anybody in those areas. We still were going to the big showcases like Jeff Cup and Disney and WAGs and all the different tournaments. But it was a different experience, and I was recruited through showcases. I remember college coaches that were in the area would occasionally come out to like a local game or a local tournament, but for me, I did not commit until my senior year. I had opportunities to commit before then, but my parents were like, nope, wait until the fall of your senior year. Make sure that you are completely sure that's where you want to go. And I had a number of different schools I was looking at. My front runners were UConn, Georgetown, LaSalle. I looked at a variety of different schools. So I had some like reach schools, some of the bigger name schools like Georgetown and UConn, but then I had some schools like LaSalle, Drexel, that were those mid-major, mid-conference, I should say, types of programs. And then for me, it was just kind of going through to see what fit best. And so through my sophomore, junior season, was able to take that time to figure out what I was looking for academically, what I was looking for in terms of soccer. But because I also wanted, and my parents made sure I was looking at schools that I would enjoy also if I did not play soccer. What was a school that had the good fit academically, that if for whatever reason I was not playing soccer, I could still now enjoy the school itself. So it's very different these days, and I try to talk to, as you do as well, Erica, talk to a lot of student athletes about just taking your time, finding the good fit, because there are so many schools, so many programs, so many locations and campuses and majors and things that you have to work through, but there's always a good fit for you.
Now, I want to talk about your contribution to the LaSalle program. Going in, did you know you were going to get a lot of playing time? Did the coach say that you were going to be an impact player, or was that something you were just like, okay, I'm going in, I need to work for this and I'm going to do it?
Great question. So I always try to encourage people, anytime I talk to them, have those conversations up front about like where you are, where the coach sees you. Of course, coaches are also human, and things can change, and you can change. But I wanted to make sure I was going to a program where I could financially be supported, but academically be supported, but also soccer wise be supported. And those were the key areas for me. So in terms of soccer, it was the difference for LaSalle was it was a program where they had a lot of change happening, and the they had a lot of younger players, a lot of like new coming in. But I could see and hear through conversations where the program is taking that next step. And that's what the coach kept talking about. So in my conversations with Paul Royal, who's still there now, actually, he just talked about how the program's turning a corner and having a great recruiting class coming in. I was a part of that change, and my class was a part of that change. There were about 8 of us that came in. They had lost about 7 or 8, so it was definitely risky because you never know how that's going to pan out. But I didn't want to go somewhere where it was going to take 2 years for me to get playing time. You know, not everybody has the opportunity to play professionally. I did play for a very short time, but that was it. My career was really the end of it was really college. So I wanted to make sure could go somewhere where I could at least be competing for playing time in my freshman year. I had no idea I was going to be as successful as I was from my freshman year on, but I knew I wanted to go somewhere that I could at least be competing for playing time for a starting position instead of going into a program where it was completely locked down of like bringing back all the same starters and going to have to wait my turn. It was a mixture of returning starters, but a lot of spots that were still up for grabs with the departure of the class that graduated before I came in. So I had all those conversations up front, and that is the reason why some schools I lost interest in, or it just wasn't a good fit because as I was having conversations with the coaches and they were saying, well, we have to wait a year and then we'll see. I didn't want to do that, even things down to, like I said, and I'm very transparent about it. My parents, there's 4 of us, 4 kids. They could not afford to pay for all 4 of us to go to college. So it was very upfront from the beginning. We needed a scholarship. And so LaSalle was also a program I could have a nice full ride to. I had enough academically and athletically, they packaged together for me to get a full ride compared to another program that I will not name, where they said, we don't give scholarships out to freshmen. We actually make them pay their first year, and then sophomore year, we'll have that conversation and see. Great program, would have loved to have played there, but that didn't work for me because there was no guarantee. And so you have to take into consideration, again, the best fit for what you're looking for. I know some people that went to a school that were like, I just want to sit and travel and I don't care if I play. I just want to be on this great program. And that's also fine. But for me, I wanted to be able to have an impact and did not expect the impact that I did, but was very blessed to have a school that gave me that chance.
You had such the perfect fit with where you went for college soccer, and that's so important is looking at that financial aspect, and I think that's one people overlook because they get so bright-eyed with these programs, their dream schools, and then when push comes to shove, it's like, "Oh, well, I don't think I can handle this financially, maybe my academics don't meet it," so that is really important to look at, and you might end up going to a school you never would have thought of, but having such a great experience. And Renee, I just want to touch on your contribution and just you growing within that program. So early on, you had a lot of success, came as an impact player, but how did you continue to level up each season? Because I think when you have success early on, a lot of people tend to get a little bit complacent, but you were the opposite of that. And then you became a 3-time All American. So, what did you do each season to just have an edge and get better?
That's a great question too. The biggest thing for me that helped was nothing was ever given to me. So everything I accomplished, I earned. I worked for. I did. With the help of people around me, but it wasn't ever a situation where things were easy. I always had to prove myself. And so a lot of those same, and I know we'll talk about this as well, but a lot of those same skills and that drive and that motivation, I still have that today, where I had to fight for everything. I remember being told I was not good enough. I was too skinny. My dad coached me, so I was never going to be good. All types of things that coaches, college coaches, peers, whoever were saying. And so I was determined to overcome that and to show that, I'm strong because of who I am and my background, not that's not a limitation. And that's exactly how I carry myself to this day. What makes me great and what makes me who I am is something that I carry with pride. So it was just really a mentality change. And I remember times in college, especially after my freshman year. I mean, my freshman year, I scored the most goals. I had 12 goals that year. I didn't have that same goal success the next 3 years, but because of that, I remember I still had moments where there were expectations now put on me, and with each season, the expectations grew. I was named an All American my sophomore season, so being an All American sophomore year, it's like, whoa, where do I go from here? And that was very hard to deal with, but with family, with people around me that helped continue to motivate me, I always was finding ways to continue to raise the bar. So even little things like I remember working out I lived in a townhouse with my friends on campus, and I remember like being in my room. I would do abs, push-ups. I would do like like touches, or I'd go outside and do some like out front. I remember calling. I would call up my trainer since I was only an hour from home and was still in the area. I would call up my trainers that I worked with growing up, the ones that I felt like were best helpful for me. And there were two that stand out. In Everett Lewis and George Rodriguez, who I would always call and be like, "Hey, I need to work on finishing. I need to work on my first touch. I just need to get out and play." And they'd bring in other, boys or other players, and I'd jump in and play with them. So, it was a lot of what I did outside of LaSalle. We had a lot of great resources and fitness and lifting and stuff within LaSalle, but I, even in season at times, had to go, you know what? I need to do better. I'm not playing as well as I'd like to be playing. That game wasn't as great as I'd like it to be. My fitness maybe isn't what I want it to be, and had to go put in the extra work. And again, still have to do that to this day. So it was me really being able to have that hard look at myself and knowing that I wanted more.
I love that flashback you had about doing, like, skills and abs and push-ups in your townhome. I think that's just so amazing. It's such a good message because the best athletes put in the work when no one's watching, and they're not seeking all this approval. They're just doing it because they're passionate and they always want to improve, and they don't want to get complacent. So I love that, and that's brilliant. And I know you said that it's gone into what you're doing today, and I know that the industry you're in sports and reporting, it's super competitive. It's saturated. So what are some things that just keep you going in that regard, and what keeps you leveling up in your career?
The thing that I always strive to tell people is, and this is how I carry myself, is that you have to be locked in on who you are and challenge yourself. It's a competition and I'm very competitive, but the competition is against yourself. That tomorrow I want to be better than I was today. And there's something that I'm doing today that is better than yesterday. So just continuing to find ways to make progress and trying to block out all the extra, because that is what I had to do as a soccer player. The moments you talk about those shifts and just like taking soccer more seriously, it was when I stopped focusing on what everybody else was doing and started focusing more on what I was doing. How was I playing? How was I, striking the ball or defending or my fitness, those little things. And then that translates into what I do today of, okay, how was this rep? How did I look? How did I transition? Continuing to find ways to improve and knowing that there's always more to learn. I'm 30 years old. I'm not perfect. I'm human. So there's always things that I could be doing better or differently. And so just having the opportunity to give yourself grace that yes, I am still human. So there will be a mistake. I will stumble every once in a while, or like even just recently I had something that could have been done better. So giving myself grace and knowing that there are going to always be things that can be better, but then using that as motivation to find ways without beating myself up to continue to improve what I'm doing. So now I'm not working out in my living room, but I'm still working out in a different way, and still stretching those limits in a different way.
That's brilliant, and I think that's such a powerful message for everyone listening, and I love that you said that you're 30 years old now. I'm in my 30s too, and it seems like everything just actually gets better in this decade. I don't know
Saying
what
that.
it is, but you have more grace with yourself, and you are more sure of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. So I love that, and I want everyone to just follow up with you and just see all the amazing work that you're doing. And for a lot of the girls listening, they want to have a career in sports one day. So that's super exciting. So, Renee, where can everyone find you?
Well, first of all, I do want to say I agree. I don't know what happened and what changed, but when I turned 30, it was like the light switch clicked and I just started to see things clearly. It was a time where it was like, okay, no more messing around. I know what I want, I know what I deserve, and I'm gonna make it happen. But I am so thrilled that you and I were able to have this conversation just to even take these trips down memory lane. It's been fantastic. I am easy to find all across social media at Renee P. Washington across Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok. My website is reneepwashington.com. And I'm always able to be reached and pretty good at getting back. Twitter is the only one that's different, I should say, since my full name does not fit. It's Renee P. Wash. But as women in sports, we have something unique that we bring, and it's something that adds value and benefit because nothing is ever given to us and we always have to prove ourselves and we always have to go the extra mile. So I am so thrilled that you're doing that and continuing to give the next generation a space to learn and get this much needed insight.
Awesome. And I didn't know you had a TikTok. I'm sure it's pretty fun to
It's
watch. So I'm gonna include all of those links, guys, in the caption below. So please give Renee a follow, shoot her a message if you want to connect. Renee, thank you so much again for coming on, and I'll see everyone next time.